dissent is crushed and a global power struggle moves into orbit. Iran's sweeping digital blackout has escalated dramatically, with reports confirming the use of military jamming technology to disrupt access to Elon Musk's Starlink satellite network. This development is being described by digital rights monitors as a game changer, removing what activists viewed as their last reliable Plan B connection when domestic internet services are shut down. According to Iran Wire, despite claims that tens of thousands of Starlink terminals are operating inside Iran, the blackout has now extended into satellite connectivity itself. Initial disruptions reportedly affected around 30% of Starlink's uplink and downlink traffic, before surging beyond 80% within just a few hours. The Times of Israel reports that Starlink receiver deployment inside Iran is now far greater than during previous nationwide blackouts. This is happening despite the Iranian government never authorizing Starlink to operate, making the possession and use of the service illegal under Iranian law. Starlink receivers rely on GPS signals to locate satellites, and Iran has increasingly targeted those signals since its 12-day conflict with Israel last June. By disrupting GPS, authorities are able to localize shutdowns, creating a patchwork of connectivity where some districts experience total satellite blackout, while others retain limited access. This has led to near-total communication silence in several high-profile urban areas, according to monitoring groups tracking real-time data loss. Amir Rashidi of the Mian Group says he has studied internet access and censorship for more than 2 decades, yet has never witnessed anything comparable. Monitoring of Starlink data packets confirms a sudden collapse in satellite traffic, reinforcing reports from inside Iran that even space-based connections are being aggressively targeted. Experts warn this represents a fundamental shift in how authoritarian states suppress dissent, extending censorship beyond borders and into orbit. Simon Migliano, who has compiled a comprehensive report on global internet shutdowns, describes Iran's current blackout as a blunt instrument designed to crush resistance.
And opposition-linked tracking, active protests are continuing across at least 20 provinces, stretching from Tehran to Mashhad, from Isfahan to Avaz, with flashpoints igniting, disappearing, and reappearing like a moving front line.
So far, the uprising has spread to 190 cities and has shaken the regime to its core.
What makes this wave different is not just how wide it has spread, but where the pressure is landing. The old model was simple. The state hits hard, the street absorbs the udar, the street goes quiet, and the regime declares victory on television. Now that rhythm is failing. Unverified reports say local authority has been partially weakened in roughly 15 cities, with security forces retreating in certain districts, abandoning intersections, and falling back to defensive positions around government buildings instead of controlling the streets. And then comes the move that regimes only make when they feel the ground slipping under their boots: the blackout. Multiple sources and monitoring organizations have reported major disruptions, with claims that the state is cutting internet access, throttling mobile data, and even restricting landlines in some areas in an attempt to sever coordination. The logic from Tehran is always the same: if you blind the crowd, you break the crowd. But Iran has learned something the regime refuses to accept. When you cut the internet during a mass uprising, you don't end the protest, you change the battlefield. Because when the digital map disappears, the fight becomes physical. People stop looking at screens and start moving by instinct, by neighborhood networks, by mosque-to-market whispers, by friends of friends, by the oldest system on earth: human communication. And in that environment, the regime's biggest advantage, surveillance and information control, starts to evaporate. That's what this script is about. Step by step, how the protests moved, how the regime tried to shut the country's mouth by shutting down its connection, and how the street adapted anyway. Blinding cameras, overwhelming local units, targeting propaganda nodes, and pushing into the regime's security architecture in ways Tehran never wanted the world to see.
The situation very carefully. I've made the statement very strongly that if they start killing people like they have in the past, we will get.
And the religious oligarchy is not new. In September, when the mullahs tried to intervene during a university speech by Pezeshkian, he stood his ground by telling them in his native language, Turkish, "Sit down." The ethnic and reformist fire Pezeshkian ignited that day shook the mullahs' authority in front of cameras for the first time. Pezeshkian, who silenced the mullahs that day, has now made his final and greatest move to overthrow Khamenei, backed by that power. But Pezeshkian is
motorcycle with 3 months' salary.
It couldn't be any clearer. Pezeshkian was clearly shouting that supporting the current Iranian regime and Khamenei is a form of mental disability. Hours after this historic statement, on the night of December 10th, Khamenei's house was set on fire and control completely collapsed in Tehran. Now, it's not just Pahlavi and the people standing against Khamenei. The head of state himself, President Pezeshkian, is also there. This is the biggest blow to Khamenei's divine authority and infallibility. The president did not target the people, but directly targeted Khamenei's legitimacy and officially declared that he had joined the people's side. This is a nightmare not only for Tehran, but also for Moscow, Beijing, and Pyongyang. The regime was being blown up from within, not from outside, by Pezeshkian's move. The roots of Pezeshkian's rebellion date back much further than today, to September. Pezeshkian's fight with the mullahs and the religious oligarchy is not new. In September, when the mullahs tried to intervene during a university speech by Pezeshkian, he stood his ground by telling them in his native language, Turkish, "Sit down." The ethnic and reformist fire Pezeshkian ignited that day shook the mullahs' authority in front of cameras for the first time. Pezeshkian, who silenced the mullahs that day, has now made his final and greatest move to overthrow Khamenei, backed by that power. But Pezeshkian is not only waging an ideological war, he has also become the voice of the misery experienced by the Iranian people. The president, a former heart surgeon, appeared before the people and declared, "I am a surgeon, but even with 3 months' salary, I cannot afford a motorcycle," thus changing sides by proclaiming the ideological bankruptcy of Khamenei's regime. And it was this sincerity that truly sparked the masses into action. Pezeshkian was now the leader of the starving streets, not the mullahs. The result of this move on the ground is utter chaos. On January 9th, Khamenei insisted that the Islamic Republic would not back down in the face of protesters he described as vandals and saboteurs, vowing a harsh response and the use of force.
The Islamic Republic will never back down or yield against those who are destructive and seek to undermine it.
Khamenei's speech, in which he threatened both his own people and Trump on screen, further inflamed the public. Pezeshkian's change of sides is also significant. According to the latest data, 1.85 million people are currently clashing with regime forces in the streets of Iran. The fire inside is spreading much faster than the enemy outside, and Iran's threats of retaliation are completely ineffective against a civilian uprising. The uprising has spread at a speed beyond the regime's control to all 31 provinces, 180 cities, and a total of 512 different locations. The regime is trying to suppress internal fear by showing its teeth to the outside world, but to no avail. Its connection with the people has been completely severed. The diplomatic reflection of this collapse was seen in London. At the embassy building, a symbol of a state's sovereignty, the Islamic Republic flag was lowered and replaced with the Lion and Sun flag, symbolizing the pre-regime era. This is not a protest. This is an organized attempt at revolution. The real blow that broke the regime's back actually came not from Tehran, but from Tabriz, the strategic